St. Paul, the Fan.
Who?
I love it, baby. Woo!
Personal foul. Flipping.
It's a covenant cleanup.
Oh, my God! Ah! Play around with a bad football team, bad things happen. No!
Wow, what's that
You're breaking up, Bob.
Shall we begin?
Let's jump into it. 651 Carpets Plus Studios. It's Nordo in for PA. PA returning from the Mile High City. He'll be back with us mañana, tomorrow. Brett Blakemore producing. And let's get into it, starting with the National Hockey League team, the Minnesota Wild. Some of us well into the day yesterday were riding on a high that was more than mile high after a 10-goal performance on President's Day in the matinee against the Vancouver Canucks. Looking for a sign of keeping that momentum going yesterday evening as the team traveled on the back-to-back to Winnipeg. 10 goals at home. Let's go up to Canada. See if we can keep that dice rolling. Last night's game, a story about not letting bad get worse. What do I mean by that? Well, let's hear from Gabriel Velarde.
Now at the left circle, Scheifele down low, Velarde dancing with one in tight. He whistled it wide. Power play down to 15 seconds. Morrissey at the blue line. Pressured by Freddie Gaudreau. Connor threw it in front. They score. Velarde at the back post. Nice passing play. Nothing Fleury could do about it. And the Wild trail this game 1-0.
Yeah, nothing Fleury could do about that one to open scoring yesterday in Winnipeg. And by all accounts, and we've seen this at times where it can sometimes be just as easy as get the lead in the first period, don't concede penalties in the first period. We saw in the Sabres loss on Saturday, we saw those 3 penalty kills, gripping of sticks, getting out of the first period alive, and effectively not starting their game until the second period. We saw a bit of that to start yesterday. Now it's just 1 goal. You can bounce back from it. But 14 seconds later,
they're looking for more, and they get it. Side angle shot beats Fleury. He's frustrated. Just like that, it's 2-0 Winnipeg as Mason Appleton went short side high. 2 goals in 14 seconds for Winnipeg.
Mason Appleton, by the way, Vox in the Box, Hall of Famer, one of several members of the NHL over the course of time, got the puck through the hole. Very exciting moment for all involved. Mason Appleton. 14 seconds later, I assume that's a franchise record in terms of, and I don't know what the NHL record would be. I didn't get into the stat book last night, but unbelievable bad getting worse moment for your favorite hockey team. Bad getting worse. First period penalties. You got the fight. The Jets are obnoxious, but they're also pretty damn good. Bad gets worse again. 2-0 is now 3-0 less than a couple of minutes into the second period until Marco Rossi. How about Marco Rossi becoming a thing? Loving Marco Rossi scoring. You'd hear from him again later in last night's game. But finally getting to see that come to fruition. Part of a season again. An assist last night for Declan Chisholm. Things having to work. And in an injury-riddled season, Rossi's the guy that needs to be something. And he's growing quickly and loving seeing that. But part of a story of things that have had to happen for the sake of this team. Can we have a third period like yesterday? I can't be the only one. You're 3-1 into the break, and you're thinking to yourself, well, we knew what they did on Monday. Why can't they do it again? We're going to need it to get out alive. No, we will not have a third period like we did on Monday. It's Velarde, and it's the power play, and it's again.
Morrissey to the right side for Connor. Jets in front 3-1. Morrissey a shot tipped in front. They score. It's Velarde, his second of the game, both on the power play, and the Wild trail 4-1.
Yeah, and then it must have been an eternity. At least it felt like such, because they had to actually wait 58 seconds this time for the follow-up.
Jets guide it back. Morris to the right point for DeMello. And to Ehlers. Back to DeMello for a shot. He scores. Monahan tipped it in front, it looked like. And the wheels falling off the Wild's bus here in Winnipeg. It's 5-1.
Yeah, and Kaprizov and Rossi, again, they make it mildly interesting at 5-3, and we're dreaming of reliving Monday's magic. You don't need a rider with the empty net. 6-3 is the final. You heard voice of the Wild, Joe O'Donnell there. Love the way he handles it. Doesn't appear very excited when the other team scores. Dig that. We're the home of the Wild, after all. But what was it? 17 goals that he had to call. 10 of them to the good on Monday. Another 9 yesterday. His voice is tired. So he needs the next couple of days before the Friday night affair in Western Canada to get those vocal cords right. 2 points out of a playoff spot. Nashville won last night in Vegas. So they have one more game played than St. Louis. This is the state of the Wild existence. There are 26 games remaining, I believe, for the Minnesota Wild. And we're already scoreboard watching on a nightly basis. St. Louis, they're the wild card team. Nashville has tied them in 60 points. One fewer game played. I don't even think the Blues go tonight. It might be tomorrow for the Blues. But are the playoffs dead again? After Monday, we're going back in time. That was the fun part about Monday's game, is going back in time and saying, here's the last time this happened. With Jules Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov, good example of it. When you're saying things like, this hasn't happened since Gretzky was playing, that's pretty cool. They both had 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists. Jules Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov on Monday. It had been more than 30 years since that had happened. That's pretty cool. And then you have yesterday. So playoffs are dead then again, right? Is that how we're going to ride this? Game to game to game, day to day to day? Brett, watching the game and handling a lot of the production work that you do, and you saw how everything unfolded. Your thoughts on yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately more of the same. And to me, the talker is not whether the playoffs are dead or not. It is what good is it if the Wild even get in? Because as of now, against Winnipeg, against Dallas, against Colorado, the top teams of the Central, they're 0-7 this year. They not only are they 0-7, they've been dominated by those teams. I mean, I remember being in the X when Dallas came in and put up 8 goals on the Wild before they went to Sweden. They looked like they were already on the flight. It's 4 people driving the offense in Kaprizov, Boldy, Ek, and Rossi, and I think a whole bunch of passengers for a lot of time. Even like you said, even yesterday a couple days ago, and they put up 10 goals. It was all the stars. It was all the top line, and there was nothing else from the bottom. So it might be dead. I know they have an easier schedule, if there is such a thing as an easy schedule in the NHL down the stretch. But a game behind, you're already 2 points down, and it's so hard to make up ground in this league. It could be dead, but they could make another historical run too. But I'm just not convinced they'll do anything, even if they sneak in, which is sad. I know it's a love covenant, but that's just what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, as I was listening to you say that, it hit me, and then I just had to find. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find it right now. Oh, yeah. The answer was incorrect. Of course the playoffs aren't dead.
Of course.
But to your point, I'm glad you mentioned it. Their production has been so top-heavy. Now, going through, again, and, we'll go back, and whether this team just gets in by a hair or they miss by a hair. We can look in, they got in, so we'll talk about the Vancouver game. If they miss the playoffs, we'll talk about that Ducks loss before the break and various things. Or the overtime loss I mean, these former Wild players, Nino Niederreiter, I mean, that was icing on the cake. These former Wild players coming out of the woodwork and just daggering us. Ian Cole's scoring again.
Alex Tuck set up the winner.
Yeah, and Jordan Greenway had a goal stolen from him in that other game by the was it Cousins? I forget how you pronounce his name.
Dylan Cousins. Yeah,
there you go. Okay, these guys are coming out of the woodwork and just daggering the team right now. You can look at that. The 1 point you don't get in the Sabres game. If it comes down to that, then we'll all be lamenting together. I do find a little bit of there's a let's all breathe. That's not very fun. It's not even enlightening or inspiring. But you get through because I'll get back to that. Here's my issue with the team right now is the Wild have scored 13 goals in the last 2 games. And that's awesome. And it is top heavy. Mm-hmm. And there is a problem with that. And I've seen it, whether it's the text line, 64686. I've seen emails, people texting me, my Wild Rube buddies as we're living through these games together. And I love the way one of my buddies put it. He's like, it feels like sometimes the third and fourth line are the land of misfit toys with this team. So the depth is constantly something that is poked and prodded. The issue for me, the Wild have allowed 13 goals in the last 2 games. And the theme here right now is, nobody said these opponents were going to be easy. Setting it up into the matinee against Vancouver, we knew that they're on a heater of all heaters, that this is a team that was ready to sell off assets less than a year ago, and now they have the most points in the NHL. But it's just unacceptable. Flowers middling right now. And so, with the trade deadline looming and such, and he's going to get to call his own shot. That can be a talker, certainly, but he's also just not great at this particular moment in time. And the Gus Bus, he's broken down on the side of the road. The city came by and wrote the date on him. They're going to call Booger at the tow shop to come take him away on a flatbed. It's just not good. And so when you combine a tandem in net that you can't rely on with injury-riddled, and I don't want to say lack of stability, but certainly without Spurgeon, and again, guys that have to work. Declan Chisholm has to work for this team to achieve what it wants to. That's just unacceptable, what's happening there. So is the Gus Bus broken down? Or, and feel free to enlighten me, I'm not immune to the idea of learning, maybe the Gus Bus isn't broken and I'm overreacting. But what I've been watching in recent times isn't very good. And that, for me, is kind of the A topic in this. Very top heavy, totally on board with what you're saying, Brett. But what we're seeing in net right now isn't what needs to be. And now the Wild catch the Edmonton Oilers. Talk about at times, Oilers fans, we can commiserate together and talk about our top heavy teams that don't have goaltending. Well, the Oilers are it feels like they've righted that in some ways, but they're starting a homestand tonight against Boston. We get to chill and then think about them on Friday. And they're not immune to overpowering teams with their offense either. So the goaltending sometime between now, this very moment, and Friday night lights in Edmonton has to be much better. Get through this 4-game stretch. Seattle on Saturday. So we go with a couple of back-to-backs this week. Just we did one. Now we'll do Edmonton and Seattle on Saturday. Come home with at least 4 points. So let's get one of these. And that's such a conciliatory, it feels like I'm conceding something in this. Just get one of these games. How about that? Get one of these games, and then it's a sprint that truly begins upon coming back home next week. I think Carolina's in town on Tuesday. So Minnesota Wild is certainly not dead, but man, just ugly at times. Can't keep up with it. But we're still in the mix. 2 points out of this spot. That kicks off 9 to noon, and a TimberTech set list. Thank you, TimberTech. Mike Grimm, voice of Gophers Sports, is going to be in studio next. And Gophers Hoops team, some football mixed in as well. A couple of players I'm interested in seeing at the NFL Combine taking place next week, whether it's Tyler Nubin. I still can't get my brain around Brevin Spann-Ford. And it's so interesting with tight ends as they enter the NFL that the production, where we will know Marvin Harrison Jr., okay, we see the 1,000+ yards and all the TDs. That's production that is tangible. A tight end, from the measurable standpoint and a physical standpoint, a lot of these guys might not have done a ton in college for their squads on the field, statistically, but are finding their way through the measurables of things like the combine, pro day, etc., and finding themselves with an NFL job. So talking combine, PJ, hoops, football with Mike Grimm. Pat Micheletti's going to hop in studio. He's here for a podcast, I think, with Kevin Gorg. He's going to be in studio at 10:35, continue the conversation, jump back into the conversation with the Minnesota Wild, Vikes Bites and news in the mix, the Kirk, the JJ, the Daniil, the talkers that never die. We're going to continue them until we get finality. More of that today as well. And then Joe Polad, well, owner of the Twins, he's managed quite effortlessly to piss off a significant number of Twins fans after an appearance on the club's flagship yesterday. So Dan Hayes of The Athletic is going to join us from Fort Myers at 11 to break some of that down and what's going on with the Twins as they are in the heat of spring training. So that's the TimberTech set list. It's Nordo in for PA. Brett Blakemore with me. We'll chat with the Vox. Mike Grimm in studio next. It's not.
Stay connected to the Fan.
He might not be going anywhere, but this shirt is going fast. Check out the KFAN Pro Shop to get your I Ain't Going Nowhere Ant shirt today. KFAN.com keyword store to get yours before they're gone.
Who did this song, Brett?
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
I love them.
Catchy.
It's a little funky.
Anyway, 9 to noon. Nordo in for PA. Happy Wednesday to you. And joining me now in studio, voice of Gophers sports, not only the football team. I do have some things to get into regarding the football team too, because the NFL Combine's coming up, and there was... Ultimately, it felt like much ado about nothing in the end, but there were, a week or two ago, there were these guys just trying to be in Mexico. Yeah. Guys just trying to hang out, and suddenly you might be going to UCLA. Who knows? Yeah. But we'll get into that stuff maybe later. But Mike Grimm, voice of Gophers football and Gophers basketball. The Gophers shook off a couple of tough losses, not only to Iowa, but Purdue, and then they handle Rutgers, and they host the Buckeyes tomorrow evening at the Barn. So gophersports.com for tickets and details. We're your home for Gopher Sports. You can hear Grimm on the call alongside Al Nolan with us. How did the team, do you think, handle that duo of losses there? At this stage of the season, it's not dog days. It's kind of ramp up time, right? And so this is a team that had played, I think, exceptionally well for a few weeks in a row. You trip up with Iowa, that's just a kick in the pants there. And then you can even kind of taste it against Edey and Purdue. You end up, how do you think that Ben Johnson's team handled that now moving forward?
Yeah, first of all, it can be dog days this time of year. We've had that.
Well, yeah.
So the good news
not
is
this
it's
time
not.
around. Let's go.
So, and trust me, the dog days, if they hit this early, that's not great. And so these are steps, right? And it's all part of the process. So now they're playing meaningful games, which is great. It's fun. Everyone's engaged. Hopefully they get a great crowd tomorrow. I know Gargie's been pushing that, and I appreciate his efforts on that. $20 get-in price, and I think some of those $20 seats are those upper deck end zone seats, which are so important. Great view of the game, looking down on the raised floor. So yeah. Not the dog days, which is good. And I think part of why they were able to bounce back was that they actually played pretty well most of both of those games. So it isn't like, oh, man, they hit and they just played terrible and how are you going to bounce back? If you're playing well, you're playing well. Sometimes the scoreboard just doesn't give you the result you want. They, for 30-ish, 32-ish minutes of the game in Iowa City, were the better team. And Iowa got, they've got back-to-back big wins. They won in East Lansing last night. They beat Wisconsin over the weekend. So that's not just some patsy that, they were up 20. Minnesota was up 20 on those guys, 5 minutes into that second half. And then the Gophers went cold. And I've said this before about that game specific is most days you still win that game. You've built a 20-point cushion. And when you build a 20-point cushion, most nights you win. However, anyone who's watched the NBA, like I talked about this on the Ben Johnson show yesterday, there's almost a nightly game in the NBA where some team blows a 20-point lead and loses because the speed of the game. And again, these are the most skilled players in the world. We're not talking middle of the pack Big Ten teams here. We're talking the most skilled players in the world sometimes will blow a 20-point lead. So it happens. It and 3-point shots. And all of a sudden you bang 3-pointers, that's 9 points. All of a sudden the 20-point game's 11, and now you gotta loosen the necktie there a little bit. And so that's what happened.
They've really leaned into the stereotypes in the NBA about they only try when the playoffs happen. It's something, even head coach of the Wolves, we've had him on, and I mean, I
love those visits. So he's awesome in those visits. Yeah.
Finch is amazing, but to that point, one of the many glaring, polarizingly different aspects of college and NBA hoops is the blowouts and the leads that are lost,
swings back and forth. Now
it's insane because they're thinking the check still cashes. You mentioned, whether we were talking about the Wild and how tough it is to move up in the NHL standings and jockeying for position. Well, in some ways, you have teams that know they're in the playoffs and they know that they're kind of just trying to maintain until mid-late April. And it is some ugly basketball. So for better or worse, from the college ranks, these leads, they can be tenuous and they can be gotten and they can be tracked down, but very different existence.
And yet sometimes the same thing happens where, they're not the most skilled players in the world. They're now Big Ten players, still very skilled. They're going to beat you and I in a game of 2-on-2, anybody on those teams, right? But it happens. And so that's what happened at Iowa. You're going to win that game most of the time. You're up 20 with 16 minutes to go. You're going to win that. However, the Gophers went cold. Sometimes if you're up 20, you still can withstand a cold stretch. But Iowa scored on like 8 straight possessions, and all of a sudden it's a 4-point game. Crowd, it was a Morgan Carver Hawkeye for most of that game, and then the crowd got into it because their team got going. And then, you flush the game and move on. And then you're up on Purdue, which is, I'm not a big moral victory guy. The longer I do this, the less I am into moral victories. So I wouldn't classify that as
bitter.
I wouldn't classify that as a moral victory. But there's no way you can't come out of that as given where the program is in terms of this process. That's a step, man.
Yeah.
So this is my 18th year. I've called one win at Purdue. One.
Wow.
They've just been that good over the years, right?
Is that Gene Katie?
I never did a Gene Katie game. It was a Matt Painter game. It was a Patino team in overtime. Freshman Eric Curry scored 7 in overtime. Nate Mason scored like 30 that day, and they beat a pretty good Purdue team. That would have been, I believe, 2017. But anyway, as always, I digress.
Curry had a tenure here.
He did. It was a long tenure, too. He works with the Big Ten now. He was at the game the other night on Sunday, and then he was at the game at Purdue as well. But the point is, I didn't think they had to respond in the sense of like, oh, man, because they were playing fine. They played, that's 40 minutes. It's 80 minutes, right, of basketball, and for 70 of those minutes, they played really well.
So in some ways, you can almost sell it mentally to the 19-year-old kid. You can say, you hung with them.
They should feel okay. They should feel
here are the mistakes
that they lost.
Here's where you bleeped up. This part sucks, but you hung with them.
I don't think there, and I don't, I'm not trying to say, hanging with them's the goal. They just didn't lay an egg. They didn't lose by 30. They didn't shoot 1 for 50. None of that stuff. They played okay. So I think they still felt okay about the game Sunday. Rutgers comes in, and they had won 4 in a row, and they had become the talk. Man, I watched the post-game show on TV on Big Ten Network after the game. Man, they still were gushing about Rutgers potentially being a tournament team and all that stuff, and the Gophers handled them. I mean, they pretty much, outside of that, I don't know, about a 75-second stretch where it looked like they'd never faced a full court press, in their lives, and they turned it over 3 times and committed a weird foul and other stuff. Outside of that, they were really good, and that's what happens. You build a 17-point lead like they did. Again, you're going to win most days, and they were able to survive it, and then they still end up winning by double digits. So that's a long answer to that question. How did they recover? And I don't know if they had to recover, quite frankly. I think they felt like they were playing pretty good ball. You just hope at some point you make winning plays late, and they did that on Sunday.
In that game against Rutgers, and you mentioned it, it was fairly close to just kind of being a wire-to-wire. Gophers are a better team. They're going to win this one. Pharrell Payne kind of jumped up a little bit.
Man.
Had his best game of the season, I think, statistically overall. Like, is that part of? Is that an oh wow, Pharrell did that, or is it he's ascending? Like, he's young, he's got some room to grow a little bit. Like, let's get excited about Pharrell Payne. What did you think?
Yeah, I think all of that. I think that's all true. And I also think he did it against Cliff Omori, who's one of the better bigs. He's the second leading shot blocker in the country, leading shot blocker in the Big Ten. He's a double guy, and he did it against that guy. So I think that's good. I asked. It's funny because I think I know what I'm talking about. So in the pregame show interview with Ben, I said, well, with Omori, they have a rim protector. You guys. And Minnesota's a pretty good mid-range jump shooting team. Cam Christie, Mike Mitchell, Braden Carrington has come on with his outside shot. It's looking good now. They can make the 17. I'm not a big 17-foot jump shot guy because I'd rather let's shoot from 21 and get 3 points, or shoot from 3 feet and get 2 points, not 17. However, these guys can make it. They've proven it. So I'm okay if they're open. And so I'm thinking, well, they got a rim protector. They're probably going to have to rely on some of that mid-range skill. And Ben answered the question like, yeah, maybe, but we're going to try to create some ball movement and driving lanes and take it at him. And I thought, okay, well, that'd be interesting.
Maybe he saw something.
They did. They must have, because Elijah Hawkins drove and they were getting lob dunks.
Yeah.
And then Pharrell Payne was just a beast. He was just an absolute beast. He was getting second chance points. At some point, and I know it's the elephant in the room, at some point he's going to be better at free throws. His form is good. He's 38% right now. If he, he had 21 points on a day where he was like 5 for 12 from the line.
He was 5 of 11.
5 of 11. So
I was going to ask you about that because I knew
he could have had a 25-point night.
Yeah, I knew a long time ago in the red gym at the Mankato YMCA that basketball wasn't for me.
It wasn't for you.
And I knew it because at my best, I was 6 of 10 from the line.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is just never going to work. First of all, other physical limitations certainly would come into play.
Yeah. What's your
as
height?
I got older.
About what? 6?
I'm 6'1" when I don't slouch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's you'd have to have some quickness then.
At my peak athleticism, I could touch the rim. But I was all like pass and get out of the way.
Yeah, Well, you got to know your strengths.
I'd be Elijah Hawkins without any of that mid range stuff, any of that driving. I could set an NCAA record in assists. Just put me out defend. I'm scrappy.
You can distribute. You're a distributor, no doubt.
But I knew my limitations. But I was going to ask you about that because that's. At one point, how are they from the stripe? Because I've seen that in the past, and it's such a weird. Maybe it's not a weird thing, but we struggle with free throws, and that's kind of been I would say even maybe the last 7 or 10 years it has been a talker that kind of percolates at times.
Yeah, but great question. Let me finish with the Pharrell question. This is what he is. Yeah. He's had some back issues, so when it looked like he was feeling pretty good. And he's had some big games. He missed the Penn State game. That gave him some time to get healthy. And I think he was motivated. I think he felt like, look, this is one of the better bigs in the league, and I'm going to take it at him. And man, was he dominant with the double-double. So hopefully more of that comes about. I also thought they were relentless in their energy to get him the ball. Sometimes I'm shocked at times when I watch teams that have good post players, how little commitment they have to feeding the post. Like I always thought when I watched Luka Garza for Iowa, I would tip my cap every time I watched that team because they had no problem feeding him the ball 35 straight possessions.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you'd say, well, why doesn't some other team that has this great post presence do that all the time? And they just lose sight of it or something. So I was impressed with the commitment to keep feeding him. And then you got just this great versatile player in Garcia that complements him because he can also post up. He has a good mid-range game. He's got a good floater game. As he gets close, he can shoot left-handed and right-handed. So he can hit the three. And he's been hot lately from three, so that all helps. But free throw wise, they have had some issues shooting free throws in recent memory. This year, it's really interesting because they have good free throw shooters up and down the roster. I did this a couple weeks ago. If you remove Pharrell from the team percentage, because Pharrell's 38, And I hate to cite guys for this, but Parker is 50%. Parker Fox.
Oh, come on, Parker.
If you he's one of our favorites, but if you remove those two guys, his team shoots like 73, 74%.
Oh, we can win games with that.
For sure. You just have to pick and choose the time. So they did do a little offense, defense with Farrell late in that game in the final 2 minutes. Carrington came in when Minnesota was on offense because they didn't want Farrell to get fouled. The weird thing with Farrell is if you watch him, I think, I'm not an expert. It looks to me like his form's pretty good. I know he's got soft touch, but for whatever reason, he has not been able to dial in on that free throw situation. But
I can speak for Farrell. That hoop looks like it's a mile away.
And it looks like it's the size of a beer can, maybe, to try to fit a basketball in.
Trying to get a golf ball in a teacup.
But they did hit big threes. They had the little meltdown where they were turning it over, committed a bad foul, had a 10-second call, all that stuff. But the key was if you make free throws, you're going to win the game because you've scored 80. You're on your way to 80 points.
Yeah.
And Mitchell hit big free throws. Garcia hit big free throws. And then Elijah Hawkins hit the biggest free throws. And a couple of those were in one-on-one situations with extreme pressure, and they buried them all. So I think actually, knock on wood, it's a pretty good free throw shooting team. Into the 70% as a team. They have a couple of guys that need to step it up. Like Josh Wola-Joseph was 54% last year. He's in the 70s this year. He's worked on it. So hopefully Farrell can make a jump that's similar. And even in recent games, Parker Fox, to his credit, tip the cap to him, he has also improved his percentage. So is it not a concern? I don't know. Could it bite him? Of course, but I'm pretty comfortable with late game situations and the ball handlers they have. And again, it happens. I mean, it doesn't. Obviously, these guys are trying. It's not like, hey, here, have the ball, opponent.
Right.
And they had that 75-second little deal late in that game, and luckily they had a 17-point lead, and that's why you build leads.
That's the perfect time to have 75 seconds of inadequacy when you have a 20-point lead.
What are we doing? Exactly.
They, you mentioned the big baskets that they were making in the Rutgers game, and one thing, I guess, getting back to NBA versus college, it still fascinates me, and we're seeing a ton of it maybe nationwide, I think so much more so, but in the Big Ten, it's really been a league that has constantly been dominated by unbelievable big men. Mm-hmm. And so shooting threes, it's analytics in the NBA. Just take a couple of steps back, and they'll even in the NBA, they'll let you walk back there and take that shot for the most part.
Particularly in the All-Star game.
Oh, absolutely. It's encouraged in the All-Star game. I love how Adam Silver simultaneously has kind of got the poop sandwich look on his face.
Right? What do you say? Something like, "Well, you scored the most points."
Yeah, he's simultaneously depressed by the product, but in a lot of ways, as commissioner, he's done nothing but kind of encourage that product that he put out there. So the dichotomy of that. This team, they're finding buckets from Cam Christie, and it was Hawkins not only with those free throws you were mentioning, but he hit 3 triples against Rutgers.
Yeah.
And it's like their biggest baskets. Like they, and you mentioned why they don't always feed big guy. You'll see those. And, I think it comes down to, I think Ben Johnson, again, saw that, and he probably pushed on that button with those kids into and during the game. Like, this is working. Keep that thing going. But in the end, they got over the top because Cam Christie has been phenomenal this year at times, hitting from deep. You're going to talk to Cam Christie later this morning.
Yeah. Just as a little plug, my this week's Gopher podcast will feature a visit. I'm heading over to record with Cam here later this morning, and hopefully that will be up and live and active for folks to listen to later today. But
I dig that. That's sweet.
Yeah, and he's been our post-game guest a couple of times, and just phenomenal kid. And he's a younger brother of Max Christie, the former Michigan State one and done, who's with the Lakers. And I don't know, has he started? I know he had started some games. He's getting some minutes, and
I have no idea. They have so many different combinations.
He was at the Rutgers game,
night out.
Way,
he was
Max Christie, and then he was at an earlier game the night. The Gophers played the night before the Lakers played the Wolves here. Was that in December? Maybe I want to say.
Yeah.
And he was here that night as well. So it's kind of cool, good, and I'm looking forward to asking him about some of that stuff. There have been some articles about Cam, but we'll dive into a few things, I hope, and hopefully people will enjoy listening to that wherever you get your podcast. But he's been really good, man.
Is it a live or die situation? That's probably a bit melodramatic, but they don't shoot the most. They certainly don't make the most. But you're finding them winning when they're winning games. They're super efficient.
Yeah,
from deep. And
100%.
Cam Christie, Hawkins, these guys are really a big part of that.
Yeah, and the more I watch and the more I'm around, and I actually, joked a little, but not joking with Ben about this. I'm like, man, we can sit there with Guardsy on Tuesdays and break down the team for an hour on those coaches' shows, or if we want to sit on the bus or stand in the lobby of the hotel and say, hey, defense wasn't good here, and we did all this stuff. And I know that there's value in all of that, and they're pouring their heart and soul. This staff works so hard. But at the end of the day, the nights where the threes fall, you're going to win.
Yeah.
And the nights where the opponents are hot, you're going to win. So Rutgers was 1 for 12 from 3 in the second half. And everybody, oh man, they really stepped up their defense. And they did. I mean, if you watch it, they did. That said, there were 7 or 8 just wide open threes. Look, in the college game, if you work the ball, you can get an open three almost any possession you want. And so sometimes even if you're a good defensive team, you're at the mercy of, well, 1, are they a good shooting team? And 2, are they hot tonight? And Rutgers missed open shots. Had some of those gone down, it's maybe a different thing. So sometimes you're just at the mercy. Shot making is so big. Got teams that make shots win, teams that don't. And people say, well, geez, Grimm, you're really going deep there. But it really sometimes is that simple. I mean, it really is. So the good news is they got shooters. That doesn't mean that all those guys are going to click on the same night, or even any of them are. That I think that's where you get in trouble a little bit. If you can survive a 1 for 6 from one of those guys if the 2 others combine for 6 for 11.
Yeah.
But if you're 3 for 21 as a team from 3, or as Rutgers was in the second half, 1 for 13 or whatever it was, it's going to be hard to win that game.
That's Mike Grimm, voice of Gophers Sports, not only football but hoops. 1 or 2 more on the hoop side of things. We'll pause, and then I got some things football related for you as well. But just kind of in summation here, really, I was telling you before we flipped the mics on. Like, I'm just kind of surprised, like the big, and maybe I shouldn't be, but there's so much middling happening, and that's a testament to how competitive, but also maybe how wart-laden some of the teams are, whether it's Indiana having the year that they're having, Ohio State. I feel like tomorrow's game is kind of a gotta-have-it for Ben Johnson and the Gophers. Yet this is a team that can go out, be a big dog one night in the Buckeyes. Yeah. They do. You mentioned
Sunday.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They do have talent.
Yep.
But then this is also a team. I think they're like 5-10 in conference play.
5-11, I think. Yeah.
So it's just got to have it tomorrow. Schedule down the stretch. Save for Illinois. You have maybe the right games at home down the stretch, which is a good thing for the Gophers. But what are you thinking about, some mid lane and where this thing stands with 5, 6, 7 games left in the conference schedule?
We've seen this in the Big Ten now a couple years in a row. Last year was the same way. The 11 seed last year in the Big Ten tournament was Wisconsin. They played on Wednesday in the Big Ten tournament for the first time ever.
Wow.
They were 9-11 in the Big Ten, which is not terrible. But that was the 11 seed. So it was like, I can't remember exactly the standings, but it was like 11-9 got you 3rd place, and 9-11 got you 11th place. And I want to say Penn State, they ended up making the tournament last year. I forget what their conference record was. I think they were the 10 seed. And then they go on a run.
They won a couple of games.
And got to the championship game. That put them in. And then they win a game in the NCAA tournament. So I think that tells you about the saltiness of the league. On one hand, I don't think that this year outside of Purdue, I mean, Illinois is pretty good. If they made a run in March, would I be stunned? No. Their issue is they haven't. They've had really talented teams, and they've been bounced early for whatever reason. And the Big Ten in general has got to be better, frankly, in the tournaments. So I don't know if they have as many of the top-end teams as they've had in the past. But I heard even Robbie Hummel last night. I don't remember which game he was working. I was watching both at Iowa, Michigan State, and then Wisconsin, Maryland last night, off and on, just kind of flipping through and commenting about when he and Greg Gard one time commented on it. There's always a game where you'd have the standings and you'd look and you'd be like, we need a get well game, man. Oh yeah, okay. Rutgers is coming in. They're 1-9. That's the game we're going to get well. Might have been a Minnesota team that was no good. Might have been Northwestern.
Don't say that.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And there just isn't. I mean, last place team right now is Michigan. They've got some talent. They were picked to be like 7th in this league. Ohio State's second to last in this league. Think about that in basketball. Michigan and Ohio State are the two record-wise right now, bottom two teams. And then Penn State has beaten Wisconsin. Nebraska, now there was a team that you probably 5 years ago are like, well, that's a get-well game.
Yeah.
Well, Nebraska's going to make the tournament probably. They have one of the best wins in the country by beating Purdue. They've beaten Wisconsin. They've beaten Michigan State. They need to probably crank out another road win to feel real good. They won at K-State in the non-conference, but they haven't won a Big Ten Conference road yet. And Gophers go there Sunday. They've never won in that building, Minnesota. It's a tough home court edge that Nebraska has. I think they're like 14 and 1 there. But anyway, Nebraska all of a sudden is in there. Northwestern got to the tournament last year. They're going to. I hope they make the tournament again this year. They lost Ty Berry, one of their better players. But you're right. It's just kind of this, there's no get-well games. You've got to show up every night. There might not be that elite top end. I don't know what that's going to spell for the tournament, because the problem is when you're a league this year, like how the Big Ten stacked up, you're going to have a bunch of 8 and 9 and 10 seeds. And 8, 9, and 10 seeds are no place you want to be in.
Awful position in the bracket.
Terrible position. So it's hard to advance through because you're facing a 1 or a 2 in the second round, and you got to pull off a major upset.
It's a clear Big Ten bias by the tournament committee. I don't think there's any other answer.
That's got to be it. But, like the Big 12 this year has a bunch of teams high in the net rankings. They're going to do well in March because they're going to have a bunch of 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds. And obviously the bracket is, rightfully so. That's the beauty of March. It's set up for teams that you're going to play lesser teams, the better seeds you get. So I don't know what March will look like for the Big Ten. The Gophers, I know there's been some talk. Hey, can they make the postseason? I think they're really in solid position for the NIT, which is, again, from the 30,000-foot view, I think a nice look. Progress is being made.
It is a step forward.
Look, everybody that's currently on this team can come back next year. Now, whether they all do and what their decisions are, that's great, because that's how you build. That's how you get to a point at where, okay, we're a tournament team now. Can they make the tournament this year? They can. There's a path. I know Jim Souhan had a column yesterday about it. He was a little more optimistic in the sense that he said if they got to 11 Big Ten wins, that would put them in. I don't think that will put them in. The Big Ten just has not had the top to bottom net ranking necessary to get the quality number of wins. So we'll see. To me, the magic number is probably 21 total wins by the time the Big Ten tournament's done.
Okay.
They're at 16 now. So what do they got? 6 games regular season, and then whatever they do. And that's a whole nother topic, Nordo. Next time I'm in, we can talk about the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
Because I think we're not making a big enough deal about this. Never in the history of the tournament has a team had a chance to have a home court edge the way Minnesota might have a chance. If Gopher fans step up, and I get it, it's an expensive ticket, and you don't know when they're going to play. So now might not be the time to, hey, let's go buy tickets. But when you find out the bracket, go buy. I mean, you get 14,000 people there.
Let's go.
Nobody's ever had that. I mean, when you get to the weekend, if it's in Indy and Purdue or Indiana make the championship, or Illinois because they're close to, then it's a sellout, and they'll fill it, and it might be a home court edge. But Thursday, Friday, that's where you're going to try to make your wins to get into postseason play. There's never, I've been to all 18 in a row of these things now. Thursday and Friday, there's good crowds, but it's usually just a potpourri of different teams, scattering of fans, local people that just like basketball. That doesn't have to be the case here. Thursday, when Minnesota has an important game, there can be 14,000 Gopher fans there. No, never before has that happened on a Thursday or a Friday. And so let's do that. Let's take advantage of it and try to get to that 21 or 22 magic number to get in.
I like that. Mike Grimm in studio, and buy your Big Ten tournament tickets now is what we're getting at. But
I mean, you could even wait, buy the single session if you want. I think, look, I'm not trying to tell people how to spend their time or money, although I do sometimes say how to do that. But when the time comes, when the bracket's out and you know where you're going, in terms of your team, if you're a Gopher fan, go buy that session ticket and let's get 14,000 people in that building.
Let's bump it up around here.
Exactly.
That's Mike Grimm, at Mike Grimm with 2 M's and the number 3 via Twitter.
And if you want to buy tickets, now go ahead. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying when that time comes from a Gopher perspective, let's get people there. I mean, buy them now if you want, no doubt.
We're behind the clock. Let's come back.
A shocker with Grimm in the studio.
I got a couple of questions for you on the football team. And Grimm's got some more ways for you to spend your own hard-earned money when we return.
On the Fan.
Head over to our contest page and register for your shot at a pair of early screening passes for Dune Part 2 in theaters March 1st. KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter today.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Nordo in for PA. PA's back tomorrow. Not only will you hear PA tomorrow 9 to noon, but later that evening you'll hear the Gophers men's basketball team hosting the Ohio State Buckeyes at the Barn. That's a 7 p.m.-ish tip-off.
Yes,
Is that accurate?
7 game. Al Nolan and I will greet you, and we'll have Ben Johnson on the pregame show, and then hopefully the Gophers can go get a win. And look, you get the win tomorrow, you get to 17. We talked about where I think, it's just one man's opinion, the magic number is every it's just a huge game.
Get to 21.
Yeah, get to 21. And as
cool with
Gargi likes to say, the get-in price right now, $20.
Go 4 or 6 down the stretch here. Win a couple of tournament games.
That puts you in.
Because we filled up Target Center.
Yes, get those
tickets. So I got a text during the break. Actually,
Yeah.
People were confused. Do you want them to spend their hard-earned money on the team or not?
I do.
Pick a side. Grim.
What I'm saying is you don't have to buy the whole session. If you don't want to, so I'm trying to hedge my bet on not making someone spend a fortune, but go ahead and do that if you want. Yes. However, you can wait, see where, the Gophers play Thursday at, 11 a.m., then go buy that session specific. The end of the day, let's just get 14 or 15,000 Gopher fans in there on Thursday and Friday of the tournament and win some games. And then you get to the weekend. Oh, man.
Anything can happen.
Yeah.
I got this text message from Paul. What do you think the Vikings are going to do at 11?
Boy, oh boy. Good question.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I can talk. I do have a thought on this, Nordo.
Maybe they'll do Brevin Spanford.
I would love to see him stay in his home state.
What about Tyler Nubin?
11's probably high. Nubin might be a first-round pick.
On a serious note, though, kind of that was my goal today, was kind of to get into the hoop side of things. Yep. And by the way, I mean, let's not settle for NIT here. Let's not even bring that up until that's. Let's talk about it. I want to talk about a tournament team.
Yeah.
But with PJ's Gophers, I've always been. I just in recent years I noticed this, and Brevin Spanford's a great example of it, where this is a guy that. And this is, I don't want to, I hate getting down on a college kid in this regard, but I think he underachieved during his time statistically with the Gophers. However, he's a physical specimen that's cut out of freaking stone. And when he goes to Indianapolis for the combine, when he does Gophers Pro Day, if he does workouts, he's going to jump off the freaking charts in physical measurables. So I'm just fascinated by tight ends, and they're at the mercy. Many college players are, of course, and the portal has really kind of been a testament to that, where players are at the mercy of a scheme, of an offense, a defense, etc. If they don't find the right fit somewhere, now there's more leeway and flexibility to go somewhere else. But specifically with tight ends, whether he never got to that moment where he was a true offensive force. And I'll also say at times this season, lack of chemistry maybe with the QB, all things aside, dropping some balls in some big spots. That's not great. But where do you see a guy? And then Tyler Nubin on the other end defensively, I think, he has an opportunity. I think to play on Sundays, and that's really exciting. You mentioned even maybe a day 2 vibe, maybe day 1 of the draft. Yep. But where do you see specifically with Brevin that what are teams going to potentially like about him and see from him as he starts to get on a bigger platform?
Yeah, well, I think both those guys will be on a team next year in the NFL. So you mentioned the physical part of it, and they're working out now, with the experts who know their specific workouts for combine stuff. Here's how you run faster.
Oh, it's a process.
Here's how you bench press 3 extra reps, and there's technique and different things that they're learning now. So hopefully they test well. Brevin, as you said, he's going to test well. He's 6'7". I think if he's right, if he's been working the way he probably has been, you're going to be 265 to 270, and then he's going to put down a great 40 and a good vertical. The kid was a great basketball player.
So I'd look
Division I offers.
I'd look like Brevin Spanford if I was 6'7".
Yes, exactly. As Norm from Cheers used to say, what are you up to? And he'd say 7, my ideal weight if I was 7'4", or whatever the quote was, which, yes, my ideal weight if I was 8 foot tall. Anyway, not only will he test off the charts, in my opinion, Brevin Spanford, physically, he's going to do those interviews. Kid is a knockout, absolute great dude, right?
Awesome.
Teams are going to love him. And then they're going to ask him what happened, right? What happened last year? And I'm sure
he's going to blame Harbaugh. And
well, I'm sure he and his agent will have some explanation. One, they didn't throw very often.
Shiraka never used me.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't Shiraka, but yes. His junior year, he had what? He was a leading receiver on the team, 40 catches or whatever it was.
Well, he's been here when Shiraka was doing it. How many different knows? Because it was Shiraka had like 3 tenures here.
He would have had 3 coordinators over his time here, Brevin.
And then it was Sanford, and then most recently Harbaugh.
Harbaugh, yep,
Okay.
exactly. So, one, they didn't throw much. 2, he absolutely, it looked to me like lost his confidence in catching the ball. He dropped some passes. Because he had a great opening night. Had a huge catch on the eventual drive that tied the game. Catch and run, in fact, on that drive. I think he might have had 5 grabs that opening night, and then dropped a couple, lost some confidence, and then maybe you're right. Maybe the offensive game plan had to veer away from him for a minute, just because they were waiting for him to get his confidence back. He did eventually, regain that confidence. Here's the other thing that I couldn't believe it. I saw someone. One of these guys that follows it, and they apparently break down film, say about Brevin, great, physical specimen. The questions will be his blocking and his hands. And I'm like, anyone who's watched film is not going to have a question about his blocking. They will not. The guy is a crusher.
Yeah.
Now, did he miss an assignment? Did he blow? Of course they all do. No one's perfect. They're men, not robots. He has improved his blocking from the time he was a freshman, and he's talked about it. I've asked him a million times about this. He didn't even want to block. And then guys like Cole Keefe and others kind of instilled this is a kind of a run-first offense, and he is a crusher. Like, I don't know how many times he came in motion and just wiped out the defensive end. Almost every play. So I think he'll grade out well. Now, I'm not an evaluator. Maybe there's something else that people are looking for. All I know is that guy crushed people a lot as he comes in motion. The end comes out. He bashes him, and the running back goes for 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. So I think he'll grade well. I hope so. Grade well as a blocker. Physically, he's good. With his measurables.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be good with the run and the vertical and all that stuff that they do, the shuttle jump and all that.
A+ human, physical specimen.
And a great dude.
Yeah.
And a great dude. So I think he'll be on an NFL team. Probably will get drafted late, and someone's going to take a chance. And then I think he could, work his way into being a bona fide tight end. When he gets confidence, he's going to be a player.
Look out.
Yeah.
Dig it. Last thing for
and
you.
Newman,
here.
by the way,
Newman.
also a great kid. Could be a late first, but he's just a ball hawk. And he fits the mold. Loved watching him progress from his freshman year when he was a highly touted kid to even, I use this a lot, just the way he walked out of the tunnel, just the way he walked into a huddle. It just like, this
chews
is the
his gum
dude.
confidently.
Yes, this guy is the dude. And so just enjoyed my time with both those guys. I hope they just nail it at, is that next week? Indy?
Combine's next week.
I hope they just nail it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck to them, of course. And PA is going to be on site at the Combine. We'll see if any of those gentlemen from Maroon and Gold, you got Chris Ottman-Bell, probably, not a NFL draft pick in the end of things, but an interesting story of how he's had to battle his way through Minnesota. So best of luck to all those kids as they traverse the NFL training schedule here in the spring. Last thing for you, the PJ thing.
Yeah.
It got super weird for like 48 hours and then just kind of immediately went away. They had the connection with Deshaun Foster, former NFL running back. I forget, was he with the Raiders for a bit, maybe Carolina, et cetera. He's the head coach, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. What did you think of any of that?
Well, I don't know much. I know they were all on vacation. They just got back Tuesday, all the coaches. So I haven't talked to anybody about any of it, and I kind of let that stuff in my own mind. I know I'll be here in the fall, so whoever's there is who I'll be talking about. I'm glad it's PJ. I'm 100% convinced he's the guy for this job. I am, and it's not just because I'm the radio guy. I'm around it. I see it. I would, we have ways to talk. I would talk around it if I felt he wasn't the guy. He is the guy. He's got things going. They'll have to make adjustments and do these things. That said, I think this is fine. It's okay. You want a guy that other teams say can coach, right? Like, you don't want a guy that's never getting
You
calls.
want a guy
from
that
anybody.
wants to be wanted.
If you're at Alabama, no one's calling your guy because he's either winning titles or he's getting fired, right? There's nobody that's going to call, or an NFL team might call. But if you're, quote, a Minnesota, and you got a guy that's winning some games, he's going to get called. He just is. And so that's what we have to live with. And it's fine. It's better than the other way. It's better than you got a guy who's never getting calls from anybody and you're just kind of muddling along. So I'm okay with it. And you don't need to panic. The world's not going to end. The sun will come up. And as it turns out, it worked out that I think the guy that is the guy for the job is still in the job.
Absolutely. So nothing has changed. Nothing is bleeped here. We all move on. You're fantastic.
Well, great.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
And have fun chatting with Cam Christie later this morning.
That podcast will be out later today. Go for podcast wherever you get podcast. And tomorrow night, Minnesota, Ohio State.
Hell yeah. 7 p.m.-ish tip-off, 6:30 pregame, and you're going to get to hear all of that following Dan Barrero, bumper to bumper, right here on the Fan. Gophers hosting Ohio State. That's Mike Grimm, at Mike Grimm, with 2 M's, number 3, on Twitter/X. It's Nordo in for PA 9 to noon. Let's catch up on